Welcome to the Brewing Wellness Podcast, nourishing UFT members, one conversation at a time. Brewing Wellness is a podcast created by the UFT Member Assistance Program to support the mental health and well-being of our members. In order to do the work you do every day and be present for your loved ones, students, and patients, your cup has to be full. Brewing Wellness focuses on mental health and wellness topics that can help us all thrive in our professional and personal lives. We'll be releasing a new episode on the last Monday of each month. Remember to listen to the Brewing Wellness Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And please, don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's get started.
Hello and welcome back to the Brewing Wellness Podcast, hosted by the UFT Member Assistance Program. My name is Vincent Corletta, and I am an 8th grade ELA teacher. Today, I am joined by Sherry Reiter, licensed clinical social worker and one of the pioneers of poetry therapy. Happy October, and we're 1 month down already. I know we have some fans of fall and the holidays that come along with it. However, a little known fact about October is that aside from all the pumpkins and pumpkin spice and spooky stuff that everyone loves, it's also National Book Month, something that is special to me as a reader and also as an ELA teacher. It's a time to focus on the importance of reading, writing, and literature. On today's episode of the Brewing Wellness Podcast, we want to focus on the role that literature can play in therapy and wellness and discuss ways that you can implement reading and writing into your own wellness journey. So, before we start, Sherry, how are you today?
I'm good.
For those listening who may not know anything about you, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, what do you do, and how you came to do it?
Okay. I'm a therapist. I am an associate professor of speech and communication for Touro College, and I'm the director of the Creative Writing Center, which is where I train helping professionals to become certified or registered poetry therapists. Actually, the way I started out was I was a teenager and I wanted a summer job. And my father, who was from Vienna, he was a refugee who came during World War II. He was very overprotective, didn't want me to work. He was a social worker who was the director for New York City Department of Aged, several senior centers. So he said to me, why don't you come to the senior centers? You'll do some workshops. I said, what am I going to do? And he said, just do what you love to do. You love to read, you love to write. And I said, yeah, but I want money. So he said, okay, I will pay you. I will pay you $12 an hour. And $12 an hour in the 70s was really pretty good money. Well, I went in, I did groups with the senior citizens. They were my first teachers. And when I did the writing group, there was just something magical about it. People laughed, people cried. I still remember Henry Cheeseborough's Ode to a Bedpan. It was hard, it was cold, it was really unkind, and it did not fit an old man's behind. So they were my first teachers, and I knew this was not recreational. I didn't know what it was. I saw that people's souls became alive.
Yeah, that was a really great way to describe it. Kind of like how I am going to steal how I'm going to describe teaching now. Also, I have my bachelor's in creative writing from Hunter College.
Great.
And I went to Touro College for audio engineering. So I see that you're the director of the Creative Writing Center, but it's spelled R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G as opposed to writing as we would write and not spelled like your name. What made you use this name in your practice?
I use it, creative writing, R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G, to suggest balance or centering oneself. Many people lose their balance when overwhelmed with emotion, fear, anger, even happiness can throw us off balance. So writing can be a way of straightening out emotional knots, a way to achieve balance, so a sense of well-being emerges. Within each of us, I believe there is a self-writing mechanism, R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G, and just like a plant will turn towards light, our creative imagination helps us to recreate ourselves.
I love that. I always say poets, principals, and lawyers manipulate language all the time. So
That's a good one.
So you said you're a social worker and a registered poetry therapist mentor and a registered drama therapist. A lot of our listeners may not have heard of poetry therapy. Can you tell us a little bit more about what poetry therapy is?
Poetry therapy is the intentional use of words for healing and personal growth. It is using symbols, stories, journaling for greater self-awareness and healing.
That's great. The poem that got me into poetry was Anne Sexton, Witches. I've gone out a possessed witch, and learning more about her, she actually used a lot of art therapy and poetry as therapy. So I really like that aspect of it. And it sounds like bibliotherapy is a powerful tool with a long history. When does it actually begin?
It actually begins hundreds of thousands of years ago when fire dancing existed and tribes danced around the fireplace with drumming, with singing, with dance, and a little ayahuasca or weed thrown in to enhance their journey to another portal of consciousness. So it starts there, and ancient Greece and ancient Rome and Egypt. Oh, I'll give you a couple of fun facts.
Please do.
Ancient Egypt, there were shamans, okay, the witch doctors, and they would write down healing chants on papyrus, dissolve the papyrus with the words on it, and have the patient drink the solution so the healing could take place from the inside out.
I love that.
There's another guy, ancient Rome, I'm going to now. His name was Cyrannus, and he was a physician. When people were depressed, he would prescribe comedies, and when they were manic, he would prescribe tragedies to read.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as an ELA teacher, I always want my students to read, not because I'm asking them to, because reading's great. I love reading, and I want them to have that special part of their life where they are reading as well. So I think I used to try to pitch it as like, if reading is good for you, people who read usually make more than over $100,000. They live longer, all of that. But coming out of the pandemic, I've noticed that our students have a lot better vocabulary about mental health, and it really is significant towards them. So I kind of shifted that into reading is your mental health. That's your time to get lost in something, to go away from something. So that's how I try to describe it now. And I see a lot more buy-in from my students. If you were talking to a teacher, what would you say to kind of get kids to read?
I would say that if you want to meet some of the greatest souls who have ever lived, a book is like a time capsule. It embodies the spirit, the thoughts, the heartfelt feelings of individuals. The closest you can get to Abraham Lincoln or any person of history, Frederick Douglass, who was one of the greatest orators of time, this is a way for you to connect with greatness, get inspired. There are two realms of life. There is the everyday world, and there is the imaginal world. The everyday world can be very frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And sometimes we have to go to the imaginal world. And poets actually take us there immediately. I'm very intrigued with these lines from William Blake. I'm going to say them. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That's the imaginal world. That's the beauty. And poetry is a time shifter, okay? Time falls away. It slows down. When you read, when you write, if that book is good, you're not even going to be aware of time, right?
Very true.
So we are not bound by space, time, and matter when we are immersed in a book. And I have to say, I spent many hours of my early life. There was a library down the hill from me, and I used to every week carry as many books as I could up. And life is pretty tough, okay? So, yes, we have to develop the muscles of the imagination, that imaginal world. I probably lived there at least 50% of the time.
I love it. So it would be only right to ask you a question my kids ask me when we talk about reading. Well, what are you reading, mister? So what are you reading right now? What imaginary world are you in right now?
Well,
and I can answer this question too if you want me to. So.
I read anything I get my hands on, and my son booked, he's saying to me, you know, Mom, you never read this sci-fi adventure stuff, like The Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
And he reserved for me a book that I read, and it was hard for me to get into it, but once I got into it, I said, yeah, this is really great stuff. So there's something for everybody. What are you reading?
Right now, I'm actually reading Tough Liberal about Albert Shanker. But what I like doing is I kind of separate them in three. I do something that helps me organizing my chapter, something about labor history, but then something like The Wheel of Time for that escapism that I'm going. I'm reading the 5th season right now. And it's done in second point of view, which I've never read anything like that before. So it's you. But that's been fun. It's been nice to kind of get away from our real world and jump into the imagined. Let's bring it back to poetry a little bit. My favorite poet ever is Jack Gilbert. So A Brief for the Defense is my favorite poem ever. And unfortunately, it's resonating more and more today. So help me understand a little, how can poetry deal with burnout? Because I'm all about avoiding burnout and poetry, so I'm very interested in how these two connect.
Great. I'm going to preface this by quoting a tiny poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay about burnout. My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But my foes and my friends, it gives a lovely light. I think that was so perfect for burnout, because you're burning your candle at both ends. And if you do that, I'm going to go to my second poem, which is a poem that teachers, I think, might especially appreciate. It's called Marks. My husband gives me an A, an incomplete for my ironing, a B+ in bed. My son says I'm average. My daughter believes in pass-fail and tells me I pass. Wait till they learn. I'm dropping out.
Dealing with burnout It's kind of counterintuitive, right? That you have to do stuff to avoid feeling burned out. But as someone that's bought into that reads every morning and journals every morning to kind of start my day off fresh, what exercises do you have that our listeners at home can try on a daily basis to kind of avoid that burnout or stave it off?
I really admire the fact that you are opening your journal up every day.
Got to be consistent.
Wow, that is admirable, and it's a very good practice. Some people meditate. This writing can be a form of meditation. So today I am feeling dash. Right now I am noticing dash. I had a dream last night. Write about it. Just stay present to what is around you, what thoughts are circulating. One practice that some people are able to do is find one word as an intention for the day. It could be calm. It could be radiate. It could be joy, whatever is the opposite of what you might be feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're not feeling good.
That's great.
And the other thing that you can do is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, put down how you feel before you write. Maybe you're a 5, maybe you're a 7, and then write. And afterwards, take your number again. If you write for 10 minutes, see if writing has shifted something. Because Kathleen Adams, who is the director of the Bibliotherapy Center, says all you need is 7 minutes to change your emotional mood.
And that resonates with being in the classroom too. I deal with 12 and 13-year-olds all day who sometimes their emotional mood is not the best. But what I always try to tell them is just get your feelings on paper. That's the hardest part, is that transfer. And they, well, I don't know how to start it. And I'm like, then don't start at the beginning. Start somewhere else. So I love that it's like just getting it out and on the page, you start feeling that release already.
I want to tell you, I have a gift for anybody who's interested in it.
I'm interested.
And it is a package of 10 poetic sparks to initiate meaningful conversations. And if you write to me, or if you go to my website, which is the Creative Writing Center, RIGHDING Center.com, you can order that little free pamphlet, which I hope will be inspirational for you.
That's great. I'm going to order it today.
Burnout, when you're sick and tired of performing, of trying to please everyone, instead of dropping out, I am going to suggest that you drop in. Okay? And what I mean by that is slow down. And poetry may help you to do that, because in the hurry pace of every day, we sometimes lose ourselves. I'd like to read you a poem called Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen, it answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. That is a poem by David Wagner.
That's, the hurry, hurry definitely resonates with me as an educator, because we're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, till a certain time, until the next thing, and almost every time period is accounted for, right? Like you
Yes.
have to do something. So I love this idea of like, hey, don't forget, there's this whole natural world out there, right, that exists. And I love that the answer to rushing around in the hurry, hurry is natural, right? Even if you're just
Absolutely.
reading it, there's something about it that just brings you back and says like, hey, the trees are still standing, go find them.
We are part of nature, and nature is part of us. And we forget that. When was the last time you walked into a forest or approached a meadow? The Japanese were fond and are fond of what they call forest bathing. Just go into nature and experience yourself as a part of it.
I love that. And I think as a New Yorker especially, I think we all feel that like there's a certain breaking point where you're like, we have to leave the city. We got to go upstate or we got to go somewhere. So please continue.
Okay. So in burnout, the stimuli exceeds our boundaries. And we get stretched out of shape. We really lose ourselves. The demands are more than we can tolerate. So press the pause button. Self-care is paramount. If you need to, take a mental health day. Go to the woods. Go to the ocean. If you can't take a mental health day, still hit the pause button. Refresh your spirit, whether it's through writing, walking, music, dance. Do what pleases your soul. We lose our souls sometimes because we are so busy meeting the demands of every day, every hour, the linear world. There's a great poem that I just came across by a transformational poet named Nick LaForce. He calls himself a transformational poet. And he's talking about the same thing that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And he calls this poem, Pause Now. Pause now. Long enough to turn your attention to the quiet underneath the noise of the world, to listen to the whispered secrets of your soul, to return what lives at your core, and to embrace once again the unspoken and unbroken vows of the heart. Pause now, long enough to drop the effort to patch up the torn and tattered edges of your life, to let what is incomplete in you be not your prison walls, but your gateway to all that is yet to come. Pause now, long enough to let your breath be waves of the infinite flowing in and out until you arrive at last at the place where all the questions end and you yourself become endless.
Wow, that's really great. And especially that it's October. School started in September. I think that's a really powerful message to all our members that you got to hit that pause button. You got to stop and take care of yourself as well. All right, so thank you again, Sherry, for joining us.
Oh, it's been so much fun, Vinny.
It's been my pleasure.
I've enjoyed meeting you. And
very much ditto. And now you're not going to get rid of me. So happy National Book Month to all those who are listening.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Brewing Wellness Podcast. brought to you by the UFT Member Assistance Program to support the mental health and well-being of our members. If you are a UFT member, the Member Assistance Program can be reached at 212-701-9620 or by emailing mapinfo@uft.org. And once again, please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.